Hey, everybody, welcome to IndieQuest, a celebration of the indie and obscure. I'm your host, Josh, and I'm here with my co-host, Steve. What's up, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. We're getting a lot accomplished in this episode, and I'm excited to dig in.
Yeah, so I was talking to you the other day. I was like, what do you want to do for this episode? So I kind of was like, we got one emailer question. How about we send out the call for more questions and do like a beginning little listener question segment? But you know what? How about we just jump into the first question here from Musty Hobbit from the Polykill Discord, part of our network. That's a great Discord you can join. It's part of the Patreon tier. If you want to jump in and talk to some really awesome people, go ahead and check that out at patreon.com/polykill. All right, well, the question from Musty Hobbit is, to the two of you, what are the characteristics of a game that's constitute/qualify it as indie? Is it the publisher, or that it's self-published, some aspect of the dev team, or style of gameplay? ... pretty much. What do you think?
Musty coming out swinging with a very difficult question that I'm going to give you. I think I'm going to end up giving you kind of an interviewish style answer here, where I'm not going to be fully committal, because I don't know that there is like a solid applies in every situation type of definition for what's indie. I have some kind of like vague ideas, but there's nothing that I personally would specifically point to. But what about you? Before I go into any of that, how about you? Do you have a definition that you go with?
I would say it's kind of a feeling. Is that a weird thing to say? Yeah, it's kind of a feeling. It's a smaller game, usually, but some of these indie games aren't even small either, so it's kind of vague. So I would say for me, it's usually when it is a small team making a game, and it's not in the huge AAA blockbuster segment. So that's a huge range. It could be anything from something super small like VVV, do something a little bigger like maybe No Man's Sky or something like that, which has probably like a team of like a dozen people-ish, give or take. But it's not going to be Cyberpunk 2077 or, Ghost of Tsushima or anything like that. It's going to be something smaller and something that usually has a smaller team and a little bit more of a focus, I would say. A lot of those games have a very focused feel to them.
That's a good way of describing it. When I started trying to think about this, I looked at this question and I thought, I'm the type of person that really does like having rules for things. I like having like a way to sort whatever it is into a certain category. But there's really not one I can come up with. I think of, okay, well, if they're self-published, like they don't have the funding of a publisher, does that make them an independent indie studio? And it's like, maybe, but I mean, at what size company is that no longer applicable? And then you think about first-party AAA games from major studios that publish their own titles. It's like that doesn't really work. And even smaller games sometimes will have a publisher. There are indie games that get published by Humble Bundle or a bunch of other like smaller indie-focused publishers. So for me, it really just comes down to not so much a style of gameplay. It's just, can't explain it, but I know it when I see it.
I kind of feel the same way. Like I said, it's a feeling. And here, that's the thing about doing this podcast in the first place. It's like we're doing a podcast about indie games, and then people will ask us, well, what is an indie game? What is it all about? And we've probably answered that a few times over the course of the few episodes we've done here. But it's just kind of like, it's something that is kind of created by a few minds, and then we, with a very focused, end goal usually, and with rarely, it's like you said, it's just really hard to nail down. So,
yeah, the example we always go back to is Minecraft, right? Obviously, definitely an indie when it started, but now it's worth more than, like, the IP is worth more than most companies. It's merchandised in every way possible. Like, unreal.
Yeah, that's literally a game that was made originally by one person that expanded it into a literal cultural phenomenon to the point where the main character, which jokingly was named Steve by the creator one day, is in Smash Brothers. So that's just ridiculous, you know?
I'll never forgive him for naming it Steve because I have to live with that every day of my life.
Yeah, it's funny because he had this blog that he used to do, and he would answer questions in the comments of that, right? And then literally one day somebody just asked him, is like, what's the character's name in Minecraft? And he's just like, I don't know, Steve? You know? And then it stuck forever.
It just is what it is. But yeah, I'll leave you with this. I can't give you a bunch of rules to define an indie game, but if you give me a game, I'll tell you whether or not I think it's indie. That's how we'll handle that.
And for me, I will just say, hey, go talk to Steve, and he'll tell you.
There we go. All right, we got another question here. This one is from APOC or Nolan. It was asked in the Otaku Bros Discord, but I also know that Mr. Nolan is the host of the Young Nostalgia podcast, which is another cool show that you can check out. They cover all sorts of stuff. They basically just like pick something that someone could reasonably be nostalgic about or interested in, and they do a deep dive on it. So cool show. Check it out. But Nolan asks, what is your guys' decision process on trying a new indie game? Do screenshots, trailer, music, recommendations, or anything else push you over the edge to nab a new indie title? Josh, why don't you take us here on this one first? What do you look for when it comes to recommendations? What's your go-to source?
I think that I would say 75 to 80% of the time it's word of mouth. Like I'll hear it from a friend, I'll see it on a Discord or Twitter. A Twitter I like to follow is Wholesome Games, which are games that are wholesome, that just make you feel good. So that's when I find a lot of these like really like, you know, chill games in, like Ooblets, which just recently came out in early access. I found out about them, you know, through that I keep saying Discord, the Twitter. And I think that for me, when it comes to an indie game, the thing I'm looking for is a good story, a nice art style, maybe even really fun and addictive gameplay, which is something I would be looking for, and trailers, recommendations from friends. It's just, I guess it's just a mismatch or a mishmash of a bunch of different things. Or what am I trying to say? Mismatch? Anyway, what about you, Steve?
I mean, if I'm being honest with myself, I have a pretty good sense of my tastes. So a lot of times, if I see something on Twitter or whatever it might be, I just kind of know if it's something that I'm going to be interested in. And that's just something that's developed from playing a lot of games over time. That said, though, it's still important to push your boundaries and your comfort zone and try new things. And then just like you at that point, I'm really looking for the recommendations of friends that I trust, people I talk to, largely people online, podcasts that I listen to that I trust. You know, if you tell me something, or if Trav and Polykill tells me something, or a couple of the people maybe from Giant Bomb that I really trust are talking highly of a game, I'm probably more likely to check it out. Those are the biggest ways. I would say trailers usually don't do it for me because I'm not a big trailers guy. Every now and again, something will hook me if it's got a real distinct art style with a trailer. But yeah, I mean, the same problems that plague indies when it comes to sales kind of also affect you on the customer side too, right? Discoverability is hard. And it's sort of a little bit the responsibility at this point, unfortunately, is on us to find the stuff we're interested in, because it's not always going to be served to us.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And just looking, I actually agree with that completely, because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I do as many podcasts as I listen to, so probably about 1,000 hours a week or so. No, just kidding. But yeah, just listening to podcasts, and of course, there are voices that you know and you trust, and you kind of align with their tastes when you listen to these shows. So if somebody, for an instance, maybe like, I don't know, I'm trying to like pick an actual person, but somebody from my favorite podcast that has similar taste to me says, "Hey, Josh, you know," in my head, I'm thinking, "Hey, Josh, you might actually like this game because this guy actually really loves it." So that's a lot of where I find any game recommendation, even AAA. But especially indie, because they're just really hard to find in general, because there's just so many people making games, which is a fantastic thing, you know.
Yep. And the last thing I'll say, and this is obviously something that is completely born out of like the privilege of the circumstances that I'm in, that I can do this from time to time. But every now and again, I just take a complete shot in the dark, right? Like you just flip through new releases, or you scroll through a store page, whatever it might be, and or through Steam or whatever, and you just see something random and just go for it. Because sometimes that'll be like a really unexpected hit for you. Sometimes you might even find like a studio or a franchise that you've never really thought about before. It's good. It's kind of a good mental exercise, I think, to when you can every now and again just put an hour or two into something you've never heard of before to form a completely fresh opinion.
That's great. I wish I had that kind of time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm very selective when it comes to games I want to play, so it's kind of hard for me to just do that, honestly. From my perspective, I kind of curate what I'm going to play next, because I'm like, I think I'm going to like this game. I'm going to try it out. And then sometimes I do take a shot in the dark, which is one of the games that's coming up. It's not really a shot in the dark, but it's actually taking a chance on a game that I probably wouldn't have if somebody wouldn't have recommended it to me and said, hey, you're going to like this. Like, you need to play it. So anyway, I say we go ahead and jump on to the next question from Burger Champ. And I know his real name if you want to know it. Do you know Burger Champ's real name?
Is it Burger?
It's Cheeseburger. Anyway, he's from the Polykill Discord. He always makes really good jokes in there. He's a good guy. He's really chill to talk to. He says, what indie game do you think would be improved by a AAA staff and budget? Conversely, what AAA games do you feel would work with an independent staff and budget? This one's a hard one.
This is a hard one. So, I mean, we were really dealing with two questions, right? We were dealing with what indie game could use a bigger budget, and then the inverse. I think what could use a bigger budget, I don't know if I have many specific examples. The first one that comes to my mind is A Hat in Time. But really, I think the situations where a game is served by a larger team, a larger budget, is when there is a relatively large scope and usually a 3D game. Because at that point, extra budget can get funneled into like fidelity, complexity of environments, number of levels, stuff like that. And so I think it's something like A Hat in Time, where at least the version I played on Switch, I know that the PC version probably runs a lot better, was a little bit choppy at times, was a little bit rough around the edges here and there, and then, just some extra staff, some extra budget to make that an even bigger experience, even make it a higher res, add some extra features or mechanics or something, I think would serve it well. And that's, to be clear, I think A Hat in Time is a fun game, so I'm not even saying like, oh, this game needs a Band-Aid. It's more like, if I have to answer this question, that's probably the closest I'd go. How about you?
I do agree with A Hat in Time. It actually isn't the best optimized game on PC either. Like, I have a fairly decent video card, and I still had some issues with framiness and, stuff like that. But definitely that game was fantastic. But I would love to see it just expanded upon with a huge team to, like, maybe triple the size that it was, because it's a fairly short game, too. So, yeah, that's a really good pick. For me, I'm thinking maybe, like, this is a hard one, because I'm like, what game needs a little more TLC? What games needs a little more moolah, a little more dollars, behind it? So, a hard one, man. Because back in the day, I would have said Minecraft, but whoo, now they got
you got your wish
exactly
100 times over.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'm trying to think. Like, my brain isn't bringing up any games. The thing is with indie games is I actually like the limitations. I really appreciate the limitations too. So it's like the game like A Hat in Time is like the perfect example, because that game's fun. I loved it to death when I played it, but having that extra push would make it, shine a little bit more. but there's not many that I can think of that are at that level. So how about we just go ahead and go to the next question here? What AAA games do you feel would work with an independent staff and budget? Steve.
So you actually hit the nail on the head for that piece, I think, which is limitation. I mean, it's a weird concept to think of, right? When does less money and like less, when does that equal to a higher quality product? Usually the more money you put into something, the better you're going to get out. But there is a little bit to say that like under constraint, some innovation is driven. And so I'd say there's probably not a specific AAA game I'd like to see, but let's take a relatively well-known studio. I'll pick a favorite of mine, obviously. We'll go with Team Eco, people that made Shadow of the Colossus, Last Guardian. Let's take that studio, take a subset of that team, some of the creative talent, shrink their budget down and see, what can they pump out in like a 2-3 hour experience that's a little bit lower fidelity. They have a lot of ideas, obviously, and those take a lot of time to come to fruition. So if we put the constraint of budget and time, what do they produce? Maybe something like that.
The thing that actually came to mind when you were talking about that, because you said Team Eco, and then my brain went to, what if Sony Santa Monica took God of War and gave it to an indie studio and said, make a 2D Metroidvania with the newer God of War style? That would be pretty cool. I would play that. Oh,
I'd be all for it.
What's the team that makes Shantae?
Way Forward?
Way Forward, yes. Give Way Forward God of War.
There you go.
I play the hell out of that.
That's a $1 million idea.
Yeah, hell yeah. With some really awesome, 16-bit artwork and just a really cool, side-scrolling adventure with Atreus and Kratos, and I would play that to death. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'd be all about it. Awesome. Well, that was the hardest question ever, Burger, and I don't know if you're going to be allowed to write in ever again. So, all right, we'll let you stay in. Thanks for the question. What's our next question?
Our next question is from Ryan from the Otaku Brothers Discord, and we keep mentioning this Otaku Brothers, but it's just a nice little podcast with Rusty Lewis and Ryan where they talk about video games and all sorts of stuff, and they're friends of the show. We love them. They're awesome guys.
Yep.
And Ryan's asked us, what is the best way of discovering good indie titles without scrolling the multiple stores for hours? What is the title that reviewed well while looking that turned out to be a dud?
We'll circle back on the second half of that there, Ryan. But for the first half, what's the best way of discovering good indie titles? Obvious answer here. You listen to IndieQuest. You listen to IndieQuest, you're going to get to know the quality indie titles.
Yeah. That's go look through the quest log and pick out one of those games, and you're not going to be disappointed. That's the whole point of the show.
bit.ly/questlog. But okay, if I'm going to give a non-self-aggrandizing answer here, let's say this kind of really goes back to Nolan's question, I think, right? It's discoverability for indies is hard. So that problem you mentioned of having to scroll through a store for multiple hours, that's a very real problem. It's a problem on Steam. It's a problem on the Switch eShop. It's even a problem on places like itch.io. So you have to find sources that you trust that can help push recommendations to you. So again, podcasts that you trust, like IndieQuest, people that you trust online, friends, recommendations are going to be your best avenue to find stuff that you're interested in, because otherwise it's tough. I mean, there's really no good way.
Yeah, I think that the thing is every year when they put out stats for like Steam and stuff, it's like the most games that have ever been put out in 1 year has been put out this year. And that happens every single year because more people see all these awesome games come out and they're inspired to make more games. So each year we end up with like, I don't know, multiple times more than the year before. So then, if you think about it, each year we're getting thousands upon thousands of games. So it just really starts to be overwhelming. But I agree with Steve here, and listening to podcasts, friends, Discord groups, finding Twitter accounts, like I said, the Wholesome Gaming one was a really good one. Just any avenue of place that you respect people's opinions and they know what kind of or at least they have a similar taste to you, is where I would start. And then it's really hard to go through the Steam store and just search different things, but there are ways to look on the Steam store, especially of like trending games, things that are selling the most and things like that. That's a little hit and miss, but sometimes you can find some gold doing that as well. And on itch, they do some featured games here and there on their main website, so that's a good place to look as well. But honestly, it is just finding people that have similar tastes than you and just taking their recommendations when it comes to that.
Yeah, one other tip that I'll give you is if there are indies that you already like, find them on Twitter, specifically find the developers. Like they might have an account just for the game, but if that's only really being run as a PR vehicle for the game, find the Twitter accounts for the developers of that game that you like and follow them, because then not only are you going to hear about the next game that they're working on that you might not have, but also the indie community, like the developer side, also knows that discoverability is an issue, and they have friends in other studios that are working on other projects that they will help promote when they can too. And so following some of these developers, you might see them retweet or share a game that's being launched from someone that they know, or something that is maybe similar to the game they worked on, and you can get your horizons expanded a little bit that way too.
And the second question is like, what is a title that is reviewed well that like ended up being a dud for me? That's a hard question for me, because I'm like sitting here like thinking about it, and I'm just very picky when it comes to titles that I play. So if a game is starting to feel like a dud, I don't usually sit it out all the way through, and it doesn't really happen that often because I'm so particular with the games I choose and play that it's very, very hard for me to find one that I'm just like about, usually I just play games that I think I'm gonna like and then stick through it and enjoy them. So I don't know if that's just me, but what about you, Steve? Any game that turned out to be a dud for you?
Honestly, no. It's kind of the same thing as you, where I tend to play through something only if I'm liking it. I also have often been criticized. I don't know how true it is, but I'll buy into the criticism a little bit, that I'm too overly positive on everything that I like play or experience. They're like, oh, Steve, he just likes everything he ever plays. So it's like, who cares what he has to say? But
I feel that so much, man, because everybody's like, Josh just likes everything. I'm like, no, man, I'm super specific on things I like, and I know what I like, so I play what I like. Yeah, I just relate to that so hard.
yeah. So, and most of the time that I don't like a game, it probably didn't review well either. And there's some examples I can think of games where like my hope for how much I would like it didn't quite line up with how much I liked it, but that's usually like I expected it to be a 10 of 10 in my head, and it turned out to be like a 9 or an 8.5 in my head. It's like it's not a big enough gap to really sell it.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and that's how it is. It's like we're adults. We have limited amount of time to play these games in the first place. So when we're going through curating list of games that we're going to play next, we're very specific. We know what we're going to play. We know what we like. And like you said earlier, we do take the occasional chance, but it's a chance we take for like, maybe I might like that. But I don't feel like that has like turned on me in a negative way ever. I usually end up liking the game, even if it's kind of one of them I'm taking a chance on. And I think we're both really positive guys. We're like,
yeah,
we focus on the positive, even if there's a little jank, like Hat in Time, for an instance, to bring that back. Not to hate on it, but it's a janky game. There's janky parts to it, but we both are very positive on that game. We think it's a fun game. So, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe the eternal example here was No Man's Sky when it launched, and then they had its amazing comeback story, but I never played it, so I can't speak for it for sure.
I guess that would be one that I found disappointing at first. I did play No Man's Sky when it came out. I paid full price for it, and I still had an okay time, even though it was a little slow, a little boring at the beginning. And I've went back to it multiple times, and I still think that's a great game. And it's one of those ones that I kind of regret not putting more time into after the multiple patches, because I think finally they lived up to their initial promise from their original trailers and their initial like hype cycle. And at first, it was just kind of a game that people looked at and were like, "This game looks like everything I want it to be. The most amazing space exploration game ever made." And I think they're actually getting pretty close to that nowadays, you know?
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks to everybody for the questions. Then we will move on to our final one, which is actually an email that came in. As a reminder, if you want to send us emails, we're always happy to read questions and emails on the show. You can do so by emailing us at indiequestpod@gmail.com. All right, and this says, "Hi, Steve and Josh. I'm really enjoying your show. It's really nicely structured, and it sounds like you're doing this for years already. Thank you.
That's awesome.
I'm more of a retro gamer, but I really love my indies too. I'm right there with you. One of my favorite indie developers were Vlambeer ever since I played Super Crate Box. One of my favorites from them is the roguelite Nuclear Throne. They're not around anymore, however, they split up, but JW is still alive and kicking and is making awesome games, with a new team of people around him. Funny story is that I later found out JW is the little brother of a good friend of mine. When she told me, it almost blew my mind. It's so random that a person you don't expect, she's not a gamer as far as I know, is the big sister of a, for me, famous game dev. That's really cool. Always nice to find your 6 degrees of separation from people you like or you trust. Anyways, I want to recommend to you the latest game from JW, Kitty, Dose, and Terry, Disc Room. It's brilliant how they made such a varied game with such a small concept of just dodging discs in a room, just like good indies tend to do. Hope you'll enjoy. Greets." And now, the name on this, I apologize if I butcher it. It's Wouter, but I think it's pronounced Wido. I've seen the Dutch name Wouter before, and I thought it was pronounced Wouter, but maybe this is pronounced Vito. So either way, Wouter, Vito, thank you for writing in. Awesome email. Unfortunately, I've never played Nuclear Throne, but it's kind of always one that's hovered in my peripheral space. But I have good news for you. This could not. You have written us the world's greatest segue, because the game that I have brought to IndieQuest today is, in fact, Disc Room. As our friend here in the email mentioned, it's developed by Kitty Callis, Jan Willem Nijman, maybe it's Jan, Terry Velman, and Dose One, which is like a studio. And it released this year, released October 22nd of 2020. Pretty cool game. So I'll read you the 2-sentence stinger here because it really sets up the kind of tone. "The year is 2089, and a giant disk has appeared in the orbit of Jupiter. Step into the oversized spacesuit of a brave scientist and explore this sprawling intergalactic slaughterhouse." And they're not lying. So the way that this game is structured is you're dodging saw blades. I can't mention this game without talking about Super Meat Boy just briefly, because the saw blades are the exact same. It's very reminiscent of like dying in Saw against a saw blade in Super Meat Boy. But it's the same type of game, just like specifically the way the saw blades look reminds me of Super Meat Boy. But this is a top-down game. You can think of it kind of like basically, if you ever played Pacifist in Geometry Wars, it's that same type of concept. There's a bunch of enemies in a room and you're just trying to stay alive. The levels last probably 20, 30 seconds most of the time, but any level can last as long as you can live. So it's kind of just in each individual room of this space station or science vessel or whatever it is, you enter a room, a bunch of discs appear, these spinning saw blades that bounce around, and you're just trying to avoid them. And that it's as simple as that. It's pretty high pressure. Like I said, you'll die within 10, 15, 20 seconds in most rooms. But it's pretty fun. And then to progress through the level, it has a very 2D Zelda style dungeon, like the original Legend of Zelda, where you're in a room and then there'll be doors on each of the walls. And each of those doors will have specific criteria that you need to satisfy in order to get into the next room. So, it'll be survive for 20 seconds. And when you do that, the door will unlock to the next room. And sometimes it'll be survive for at least 10 seconds in every room in this area of the space station. So it's kind of like your cumulative average will unlock new doors and stuff like that. And so relatively simple concept, right? But they start doing some really cool things with it. First off is they know you're going to die a lot, and the game embraces that. They lean into it. So first of all, there's like a bestiary of every type of saw blade that you have ever died against. So, and sometimes saws won't appear very often in the game, right? Like this is a specific type of blade that will only show up 40 seconds into this one particular room. And so you have to like kind of, sometimes you're not trying to live. Sometimes you're literally doing runs to live long enough just to specifically die against a particular type of disc. And you'll like kamikaze your way into it. And there'll be doors that unlock, this door only unlocks when you've died to 25 different types of discs, that type of thing. So they know you're going to die. They want you to die, and they lean into it. There's also, on top of just like the movement around, there are a little bit of extra abilities that you can unlock. Things like a dodge roll to have a few like frames of invincibility. There's an ability where you can clone yourself, so there'll be two of you running around in the environment. I'm not good enough to live very long when I do that because I can barely keep track of one thing. There's an ability where you can absorb one saw and then like drop it later to reuse it. So some cool things to spice it up. And then the story, it's a pretty basic story, but it kind of it does some odd things. It a little bit, I feel like I say this a lot, but it reminds me of Fez a little bit, where as you play it, you just kind of like, there's something else going on here. Like there's some awfully suspicious things and some real kind of subtle riddles that you need to parse out as you play through. It's it's, I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. Sound like something that maybe you'd ever pick up or try out?
Yeah, I actually follow one of the main devs, Jan Willem.
Oh.
And he was part of Vlambeer, like the email said. So, of course, I follow both from Vlambeer. We got Rami Ismail and him. So I follow both of them on Twitter. And he's been tweeting a lot about this game. And it's just kind of one of those things where I've seen the art. It's kind of like hand-drawn and it looks really interesting. And I haven't actually played it myself. And I actually heard you talk about this on Polykill a little bit as well. But it's just one of those ones where I know I'm probably going to enjoy it because I like that. The thing is, as I say, I hate or dislike, not hate, hate's a strong word, those like Souls-like games where you die a ton of times, but I love a game where you die and then you have to try something like instantly again.
Yep.
And this is kind of pretty much one of those. So Celeste, Super Meat Boy, that's that style of game where it's like, here's the room, you're going to die a billion times, but once you figure out the pattern, you figure out what you got to do, you feel very rewarded in learning the pattern, which feels like that's pretty much this game's MO. Am I correct saying that?
100%. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, let's just come out and say it. Let's use the term that we're all tiptoeing around. This is a top-down splatformer. All right?
Yes.
But the thing that I really respect most about this game is it just does a lot with such a simple concept, right? Like you think, oh, it'd be fun to make a game where you're just like avoiding objects bouncing around in a room. And that might be fun for 30, 45 minutes or something, but it has a certain life to it. And they realized that and did basically everything I can think that they could have to extend the gameplay and kind of cater to different types of people. You know, if you're a like completionist or like a collector-y type player, you're going to have fun tracking down all the different types of saw blades. If you are the type of person that likes unraveling a mystery, you're going to enjoy all the weird like clues and like odd rooms. I mean, you walk into a room and it's just a completely bright golden room with some runes on the ground and no blades, and you're like, why would they do this? But it's all like connected. And so they even have like boss saws, like boss fights that you'll essentially fight.
That's cool.
It's a pretty fun game, pretty cool. Just a couple other quick things about it. We mentioned the story is sort of like in this comic style, very much in like comic panels. And they look like they were drawn, and I do not mean this as an insult. It's obviously a stylistic choice, but they look like they're really well done art in MS Paint. If you've ever seen like really nice MS Paint drawings, it's just exactly like that. And the actual story that's told through those panels is pretty simple and actually a little bit confusing, but there's a lot to it, and there's actually more to unlock after you beat the game. So if you want to play on hard or unlock more story, you have that option And then the soundtrack is... I feel like the soundtrack matches the tone of the game, but it's not maybe something that I would actively go back and listen to a lot, because it's a lot of very distorted electronic music, very like... It's kind of grimy, it's kind of grungy, it's sort of like industrial in that way. So there are some like pumping, like high energy songs, but a lot of it is sort of... If you turned buzzing saw blades into music, this is what you would get, that type of thing.
That seems pretty apt, to put it that way. It kind of reminds me of Geometry Wars 2, the pacifism mode, where basically instead of having like a shooting function, because Geometry Wars is a twin stick shooter, you usually shoot a bunch of dudes that are coming at you. In the pacifism mode, you don't have a shooting function, you just dodge things and then use like these gates to make the other dudes disappear and just destroy them. So it kind of reminds me of that, but like in a little bit more of a cartoony and kind of a hilariously like splattery way, I guess I should say, you know what I mean?
I do. So, overall, I think it's a pretty fun game. It was an awesome recommendation. Thank you so much for the recommendation there. Even as someone who has never played a Vlambeer title that I know of. Well, Vlambeer did Luftrausers, right?
Yeah, the Luftrausers, and another one that I recommend a lot, which is on mobile, but currently it's only on Apple mobile. It used to be on Android. They had some compatibility issues or whatever, but it's Ridiculous Fishing, which is a really fun game where you pretty much use the gyro controls on your phone. So you throw out a cast and you have to dodge these fish as you go down with your like line, your fishing line, as far as you can go without hitting any fish. And then when you first hit one of the fish, it starts to reel everything in really quick, and then you try to get as many as you can as you go up. And then it'll throw all these fish in the air, and you shoot them with a shotgun. And you collect the points, and you try to get as high as points as you can. And it's a really fun mobile game. So if you haven't played Ridiculous Fishing, that's one I recommend. I had a good time with it. And I kind of regret, maybe not regret, but kind of sad that it's not on Android right now. But if you have an iPhone or, an Apple device, you can definitely pick it up and check it out.
I have an Android, so now I'm bummed. But we have an iPad that I could borrow from the lovely lady, so that'll still work.
Yeah.
Overall, really fun game. When it comes down to where we putting it on the quest log, I don't think I have much that I would really knock against this game. To me, this feels like a main quest game.
Well, before we you said what it's going to be, but let's just tell people, if this is your first episode, what is the quest log? It's where we take these games. We're trying to build the biggest list of video games or indie games that we possibly can. So we have two tiers to the quest log, which is the main quest, which is a game where if you want to play them, you have to go talk to your grandfather, go on a fishing trip with him, because we just talked about fishing. So deep sea fishing if you can, because deep sea fishing is pretty fun. I remember when I was a child, I went with my grandfather and we went deep sea fishing, and I caught 2 flounders. And we had a really good meal the next day with these flounders, and it was a really good time. But yeah, if it's a main quest, it's a game you're going to want to play right now. And if it's a side quest, it's a game like, it's still really good, but put it on your backlog. And when you're in the mood for it, check it out. So you're saying that this game, Disc Room, is a main quest game?
I'm thinking so, yeah. I guess you still have to be in the mood to die a lot. So maybe you could convince me to put a side quest in that regard. But if you are in any way in the mood for this type of game and you want a little bit of a spin on that difficult platformer, I would say check it out. Main quest.
Awesome, man. So I guess, man, it's my turn to bring my indie pick.
Yeah, so what'd you bring for us today?
A little game called Outer Wilds. Have you heard of it?
Oh my gosh, have I ever the amount of character, the amount of like high quality, super dense friendship for me to say, you know what? You just played it. You bring Outer Wilds. What a guy I am. How noble I am to allow this. But yes, why don't you explain to our listeners what is the amazing game that is Outer Wilds?
Well, first off, I want to say Outer Wilds kind of took my breath away. It's one of those games that I'm never going to forget. And I want to give credit to you, Steve, especially, and Pam from Cannot Be Tamed for giving me that push to get through this game, because this is one that I gave up on multiple times, like maybe 2 to 3 times. And I'm sitting here at the end of it and pushing my way through this game and just absolutely adoring it. So, what is this game? It's a game developed by Mobius Digital. This is their very first game, and it came out May 28th, 2019, and it was actually a student project that they put on Kickstarter and got funded and made it a fully fledged game, which is really cool story.
Mm-hmm.
So the standout thing about this game is it's a first person exploration title, and it's set on a 22-minute loop. And at the end of this loop, it's the end of the universe. There's a sun supernova. So every time you go through this game, you pretty much die and repeat. It's kind of like Groundhog's Day, the game, I guess, is a short pitch for it. So the thing is about this game, it's kind of a unique storyline, and the thing about it is everybody uncovers it differently. So the basic loop for the game is you're going to get in your spaceship, go to a planet, start discovering different things about it. There's like multiple planets to look through. You pretty much are piecing together the puzzle to figure out why this universe is on this 22-second loop or 22-minute loop. And it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. And what I love is that, so obviously I've played this game. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm head over heels for this game.
Mm-hmm.
I often describe it kind of like Majora's Mask, because imagine an entire solar system, like an entire set of planets orbiting around a sun that in 22 minutes all play out in real time, like hundreds of different events and things. Like planets will terraform and change over the course of these 22 minutes. Events will happen at specific times, and it's all just kind of yours to find. So there's a real like precision and a real specificity to the design of this world. They were really good about knowing that your experience could change whether you came to a planet early in that loop, late in that loop, or stayed on a planet for the entirety of that loop. And so it's just it's really cool. It makes kind of your personal path of exploration unique compared to anyone else's.
So yeah, that's something that initially when I jumped into this game, I kind of was stressed out about. And the thing is I know that there's a 22-minute timer going for me to like discover all these planets, to try to piece out what I need to do and try to solve the huge puzzle that is what is going on, what do I need to do, what is my place in the universe. And it's really fascinating. And the thing that really ends up happening is you go to a planet, you kind of just fly out there. You're like, I'm just going to pick a planet to go to. You do to get some direction from various people. But it's kind of just like explore and just figure out as much stuff as you possibly can. And a lot of times when you land on a planet, you kind of figure out like, okay, there's like the city I need to walk through. And you can use your translator to read like stories of this long lost society, piece together like what their hopes, what their ambitions were, what their plans were. And it's just a lot of just learning more and more about this universe, this solar system as you possibly can. And the thing about this game, it's really hard to like describe and explain what's so good about this game and
Mm-hmm.
what really like captures my imagination. Like when I was playing this game, it's more about these awe moments. There's like these moments of awe that you'll have, like, oh my god, I went to this planet, I found out this really specific piece of knowledge, and then of course I died in some really ridiculous way, like I choked in the atmosphere, or hey, I fell through a black hole and blah blah blah, I died some stupid way, and then I started a loop over. But hey, I learned that little piece of knowledge, and then I do another loop, die in some ridiculous way, and then I'll figure out a little bit more knowledge, and then as you find out this knowledge, you do slowly but surely find your way to some kind of really remarkable instances and really remarkable moments that I was sitting there playing this game, and I binged this game one day. I think I played it for like 11 hours in one
Mm-hmm.
day because it's the epitome of one more time, one more loop, one more game, one more instance. You know, you just keep finding more and more stuff. And it's just one of those things that when you get the knowledge and you discover a set of things, you have those moments where you're just sitting there floored, like, holy shit, wow. Like, this game is is one of those games that just I'll never forget, because it's just like, holy shit, man. I can't believe I figured this out on my own. Because the thing about this game, you're going to want to start looking stuff up, because some of these puzzles are very this game is really just a gigantic puzzle game, because the entire universe, or this solar system, is a 22-minute clockwork machine that always does the same exact thing every single time you spawn in. And you start to figure out like puzzles that, okay, if I'm here at the specific time, this thing will uncover this thing. I'm trying to be super vague. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But it's just like, once you figure out the puzzle and you figure out different planets like thing, and then you discover more about this civilization and the world they left behind and stuff, you start to just really get into the storyline and kind of recognize the characters. There's some characters in the storyline. There's no voice acting. It's all read off of text that you read off the walls and stuff like that. But you really get invested in this universe, in the plight of the people that we're trying to just like, I feel like the universe, or the civilization that you slowly uncover, are just a bunch of science nerds that are just
Yes.
trying to figure out like more about this clockwork, this universe and the solar system. But man, you do get some tools that help out a lot. You get the rumor map, which I talked about a little bit, which as you uncover more about the solar system in these loops, you can say, okay, well, I learned a little bit more about this planet, and it says there's more to be discovered, so maybe I should go back to that planet and check out more and try to dig deeper into that planet. Or hey, this says that this planet is connected to this planet, so maybe I should check out the other one. It actually leads you in a good direction, which is pretty good. Also, in your ship, when you fly off, you have a suit you have to put on before you go into the atmosphere, just like you would imagine any astronaut would have to do. And there is a little bit of a management of oxygen and fuel that you have to, be mindful of, especially if you get stuck like in the blackness of space. There's also a probe that you can shoot off that can take pictures of various different things. So say you see like this area that's like kind of like this place you're not sure if you want to walk down, because there might be something in there that might kill you. So you could shoot a probe off and take a picture and make sure it's okay to traverse a little bit that direction. Things like that. And just exploring this universe, learning about this lost civilization, learning about how I personally connected, or the character in the game connected to this civilization, and just piecing together this giant jigsaw puzzle that is this game is just what's fun about it.
Yeah. And you might, as time goes by between when you play it and now, you might forget some of the specifics of the story, but I feel like it's the the moments of like discovery that will really stick with you for a long time, and kind of the general feeling of the game overall. What I really like is, yes, this is a clockwork world at the scale of a solar system, but it's a surprisingly personal game despite that. Like, yes, you're going to all these different planets, but most of your discoveries are kind of like very one-to-one connection between either you and other explorers, or like you mentioned, these science nerds. As you uncover the ruins of this former civilization and this former race, you learn them by name. Like, you'll see their names in the logs, so you'll get to know, oh, this character likes to joke around a lot, and this character's kind of a hothead, and this character like doesn't think very highly of this other one. And so it's like you weirdly get to know these people just based on the information you read about them.
Yeah, this game is definitely environmental storytelling, the game.
Yeah.
Really. You know, a lot of people say like a walking simulator, right? You go through let's say Gone Home is a good example, which I'm sure we'll bring to the show eventually. But you go through this house and you're reading this stuff about people and you're learning more about their lives. This is that, but for an entire solar system with like 6+ planets, you know, with moons and, you know, satellites and different things like that. I'm trying to be vague, but it's that. But as you go through each area, you really just learn more and more about these people that have left behind like these old dilapidated buildings, these civilizations that look so like if you use your imagination a little bit, you could see that they used to be so full of life, but it's been so long since they lived there that you're kind of just discovering new things. And it's just, oh man, there's so many wonderful moments in this game that I like brought me to tears, that made me happy. I run the gamut on what I felt for this game, because I'll be pissed in one moment, like, God damn it, I cannot believe that I just accidentally slammed into the sun trying to land on this planet like 6 times. Because the ship, I'm going to be honest, the ship doesn't control super well, like the one you're trying to explore the galaxy with. You finally, like, eventually you kind of get a feel for, okay, I gotta go here. I'm going to go to this planet. I'm going to turn on autopilot, but wait for a specific time. Maybe I have to turn it off a couple times and zoom around a certain thing. You know, you just kind of learn the controls as you go. It's a little finicky at times, but yeah, you'll have that moment where you're pissed off. Like, I'll be pissed. And then I will have this really somber storyline unveiled as I'm looking through like a comet, which is, I don't want to spoil too much about it, man. I'm trying not to. Yeah. But there's an incident with the comet where I was like super sad, like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened, and I was feeling super sad about it. And then there'll be these moments of like, holy shit, super terrifying, especially Dark Bramble. That whole area, super stressed, super in my feelings, like, holy shit, this is super scary. I'm scared the whole time. And I think this game actually is probably scarier than most any other game I've ever played in some instances, because they take the stress level of, oh, I want to get through this thing and not die and do my best, but there's this crazy thing right here that might, and I get really scared. So yeah, I think that this game just plays on emotions in so many ways.
It's so true. Yeah, and yes, I agree that sometimes it's one of the most tense experiences you'll have, even though it's not a horror game in any way, right? Like, sometimes, you know, it's one of the most chill games you'll play. Sometimes it's one of the like saddest games or coolest games or most clever games. Mm-hmm. It does a lot. And what I've always appreciated about this game's like design, you mentioned, you know, you have these tools. You have a ship, you have a probe, all this stuff to use to help you kind of puzzle solve. But none of that is locked behind any progression in the game. You have your tool set from the moment you hit go, I guess outside of like the tutorial in the first minute or two. But once you take off out into the solar system, that's that's it. From then on, the only thing you'll ever gain is a better understanding of the world. If you know what to do, you can beat this game in 17 minutes or whatever it takes. Like there's nothing stopping you other than what you've learned and what you've taught yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about this game that's super clever. And man, like I feel like this game might have the best sense of discovery I've ever had in a game, because a lot of games you kind of like, you get a waypoint and you're like, okay, go to this waypoint, and then you learn a new thing about your character, but then you get another waypoint to go to the next thing. This one is just kind of like, okay, have fun, figure it out.
Yep.
This is the universe for you. Figure it out. I love that. And the thing is, we did say it's one of the scariest games ever. Like, it's not a horror game, but it has so many peaceful and wonderful moments, because you do meet a lot of people along the way that are part of your like exploration crew. And when you talk to them, they're super chill. You hear them play music, and then the music is so good in this game. Oh my God. The soundtrack.
It's unreal, especially, I mean, all the music is good. Like, the title theme is good. There's like this kind of core melody, core theme that reoccurs in a bunch of spots that you actually use for some puzzle solving bits in certain occasions. But then that last 2 minutes, so at the end of every loop, it's 22 minutes long. When 20 minutes hits, the music changes to let you know, hey, the sun's about to blow up, like we're about to go supernova, it's about to be over. And it is so like somber and melancholy, but like a little bit sweet and a little bit peaceful. It's like whether or not you're like rushing to get something done before the loop ends, or you just realize you don't have the time and you go sit out on the edge of a cliff and kind of wait for the end of the world. The music matches either scenario.
Yeah, and we actually brought this song to a recent IndieQuest OST, IQ OST. And the thing is I was editing this episode of the IQ OST as I was playing the game, and then I listened to the song to go along with it, and I had just finished the game, and then I heard the song. And then as I was listening to the song, listening to our own podcast, I guess, self-aggrandizing, whatever, but I was sitting there just like, I was working, listening to this episode, and then the song came on, and I just got a bunch of memories of different like 2-minute last minutes. The last 2 minutes, there's a time where I'm just trying to, like, I just got to a new area and there's a bunch of stuff to read, so I'm just like skimming it as fast as I can. Like, okay, I got 2 minutes, I got to do this as fast as I can. And there's another time that I met a new traveler on Ember Twin, and the music came in. And I literally just stood there next to him and just waited for, the inevitability, just listening to the music, just hanging out with my buddy, waiting for a supernova and to die and to repeat this process all over again. It's just one of those most unforgettable games, and it's really hard to talk about without spoiling things. Yes. I'll tell you that much.
This is absolutely, more than most games I could ever think of, the type of game to go in blind. In fact, that would be my number one tip for people, is don't look anything up. Just, if it seems interesting to you, don't even look up screenshots or anything. Just go in knowing as little as you possibly can, because the more you have to discover, the more you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, and I do have 2 tips myself for this game, because like I said before, as I gave up on this game multiple times, and of course I have friends pushing me to finish it. Hey, keep going. And I want to be that friend for you guys. So the 2 tips I have is, 1, you got to be patient with this game. Don't try to rush through it. Take your time. You got 22 minutes per cycle, but that doesn't mean that you can't do the thing on the next cycle. There were many times where I'm like, well, I probably only played for 16 minutes, but you know what? I'm just going to jump off into space without my spacesuit and kill myself and start the loop over. And keep going. And then number 2, for my tips, is don't give up, because the game will feel like there's a lot to do. And sometimes you don't really know where to go. And definitely check your rumor map that's in your ship and try to plot a course for something that you haven't discovered yet, because going to a new place and discovering more is what this game's all about.
Yeah. I'll add on to both of those. First off, for the being patient, definitely. So I've had friends come to me frustrated by the time loop mechanic. And the thing that I would kind of prep people for before they go in is most games have conditioned you to think of death as a punishment for a mistake you've made, and you have to get out of that headspace. Death is like, it's just a natural part of the process of playing this game and learning. So you can't be frustrated when you die. That is going to happen. You're going to have loops that you can't finish everything you want to. It's designed to be that way. And so just like kind of enjoy the journey at whatever pace you can take it personally. And then when it comes to not giving up, I will admit that when you first start it, it's interesting. When you first start, I feel like there's all this endless possibility to explore that can almost be overwhelming or exciting depending on who you are. And then at some point you probably will feel like maybe you've seen everything and you don't know what to do. But I 1,000% can confidently assure you, you have not seen everything. So you have to kind of a little push past that wall, which is probably where you stopped one of those other times. And it's kind of like, I always love it, but when it gets its hooks into you and there's a couple mysteries that you're like really clamoring to solve, that's like when you're just like full on down the slip and slide. There's no stopping you.
The thing about that is sometimes you'll just think that you hit a wall. Like, oh, I figured out all there is to figure out about all these planets. But you really didn't, man. Like, there's always something more to dig more into in this game. I feel like of course, eventually you'll 100% it. You'll put 30 plus hours into this thing, and you'll figure everything out, and you'll meet everybody you need to meet. But even me putting that much time into it, and then listening to a couple other spoiler casts and like things like that recently, just to kind of like, and reading some articles and stuff like that, just kind of fulfill my mind space on like where I am with this game. I missed a couple things that I didn't really expect, and I feel like I did everything. So even when you feel like you did everything in this game, you probably didn't. That's the crazy thing about this. And the way they pulled this entire solar system off, this world off, it just blows me away every time I think about it.
All right, well, let me ask you this. A half an hour of us both just basically shouting at everyone, play this game, it's incredible. I want to, I'm going to take a leap of faith. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to say this is probably a main quest game.
No, it's not going on any list. I just wanted to talk about it. No, it's a main quest game. 100%. This is a must-play game. If you haven't tried it out, I recommend it. Be sure you're in the headspace of wanting to just explore, because that's 99% of what you're doing in this game. It's not a game about action. It's not a game about killing people. It's a game about you, your ship, the universe, and trying to just piece out what everything means, and just finding meaning in this world, in this universe that you get to go explore. It's awesome. Highly recommend it. It's definitely a main quest game.
Couldn't agree more. Of all the games we've covered on the show up to this point, this would be my personal number one pick off the main quest. And the main quest is all number one picks, so it doesn't really matter. It's all just tied for number one. But yeah, this game just means so much to me. One of my all-time favorites. But I got two things for everyone here in the audience. First of all, I want to just give a quick shout out. I don't know if you've watched it yet, Josh, but for anyone that has played Outer Wilds, there is a documentary by NoClip on YouTube about the making of this game that is really fascinating and really well done. It's very insightful and very cool, but don't watch it unless you've played the game, obviously. But if you have, check it out.
I did watch, like, I'd say about half of it today. I was watching a little bit today, but that's where I realized that, like, the ship log was pretty much their like dev plan and stuff. They didn't initially have that rumor map thing in there, and that was like their actual map they used to make the game that they put in the game itself, which is pretty cool. Anyway, go ahead. What was the second one there?
And then the second one, because if you can't tell, Josh is hot off playing this game, and he's got a lot of thoughts in his head. I've been itching to talk to him about it for many, 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 many months now. So we're going to have a little bumper here, a little section after the plugs, where we're just going to talk for a few minutes about the ending, talk about the story, get into a little bit of spoiler territory. So this is your warning. When the plugs are done, we're going to start talking some Outer Wilds spoilers for a little bit. So make sure you turn off that feed. But stick around for the plugs so you know where you can find us. And then, if you have played the game, feel free to stick around and check it out because, obviously, if you've played the game, you know there's just there's so much to talk about, so much to get into. But, stick around for that after the plugs. Why don't you tell them where they can find us?
Definitely, I can. And also, after the plugs, there will be a little bit of a theme song, so we're not going to dive into spoilers right away. We'll put the theme song there. So if you hear the theme song, you haven't played the game, please turn it off and come back after you beat the game, because I feel like that's very important to say. But yeah, thanks guys for the questions. We really appreciate them, and we'll get to the rest of them on the next episode. Like Steve said at the top, we really just said, hey guys, throw us some questions, and we got a lot. So I'm excited to jump into those next episode. And it's time for the plugs. You can find me at Frantic Society and on Twitter, and I tweet about a bunch of stuff. And also, we are also on the GG app with the IndieQuest quest log. So if you want to go over there and look at the quest log with all its beautiful graphics, because I really like the GG app. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out. Go ahead and check that out over there. And Steve, where people can... God damn it, Josh. And Steve, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, you can find me on both Twitter and Twitch at Blinkoom. That's with an M at the end, M like Mobius Studios. And you can find the podcast on Twitter at IndieQuest Pod, where you can also send us questions there through Twitter if that's your preferred venue. We'd be happy to get them.
Like always, we did mention it at the top a little bit. I think Steve actually mentioned it. We want your indie game thoughts, questions, or feedbacks for the show. If you have any of that stuff, send them over to indiequestpod@gmail.com, and most likely you hear them on the show. And we do record the show in advance, so if it takes a couple episodes for us to say hi or read your email or anything like that, be patient, because we definitely seen it, and we'll probably reach out to you, be like, hey, we did read this. It'll take a couple episodes for us to check it out and respond to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you are likely aware by now, we are part of the Polykill Network. If that's what we're still calling it these days, I believe it's the Polykill Network. But
we're a part of a network that includes the Polykill podcast.
Yes. So you can go to polykill.com and check out a bunch of other cool shows. Ours is listed there, but you can also check out the flagship show Polykill, which is myself and my co-host Trav, just talking about the games that we're beating, the games we're playing, and usually a topic of discussion to kind of round out the show. It's a lot of fun.
There's also Tales of Lesser Medium, which is your co-host Travis from Polykill, talking with Snestrunk, a fairly popular YouTuber, and they bring on other popular YouTubers and people with various talents and skills and just interview them and have a good time about it, and usually get pretty drunk and make a lot of jokes. That's a fun show.
Speaking of drunk, there's also PD's Power Hour, which talks about all things alcohol. Very interesting, non-game related, very insightful show if you are interested in things like wine and all of the accompanying beverages. And then finally there's Off Kilter.
Off Kilter is it's a fun show.
It is a podcast. If you have watched the other 5 or listened to the other 5 and you still want podcasts, it is there for you.
Hosted by Brian, which I like Brian. He's a good guy.
Good dude. It's actually a great show. It's very entertaining, very casual, very chill. Just a fun show.
Yeah, they play a lot of games. I enjoy listening to it. Anyway, Steve, how about you sign everybody out? Really? Anyway, Steve, how about you sign us off and say goodbye to the good folks out there?
Thanks again, everyone, for writing in. Hope you have a wonderful day. Just remember, indie games are good. You should play more. And if you're looking for recommendations, maybe try Outer Wilds. Thanks, everyone.
Speaking of Outer Wilds, stick around to after the credits here if you want to hear some spoiler talk. Hey there, guys. So if you're here right now, listening to this podcast, you have played Outer Wilds, you've seen the ending, and you're all up for spoilers, you're ready to talk spoilers, you're ready to listen to spoilers. If you haven't played Outer Wilds, turn off the podcast now and come back after you play it, because this is going to be a little bit of spoiler talk. We're going to talk about all the ins and outs. We're going to talk about the time that Sora, Donald, and Goofy came up, you know.
That's crossover.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts crossover. Anyway, if you haven't played Outer Wilds, please turn the podcast off now. If you haven't, we'll give you a second here, and we'll talk about some spoilers.
All right, if you're still around, we've given you a lot of opportunities to leave, so it's on you at this point.
Yes. So about that ending, man, that beautiful, wonderful ending to Outer Wilds.
Were you tearing up?
I'm gonna be honest, man. Like, I didn't get super sad. It's a super happy ending to me.
It's just like everything else, I think, in that game. It's very melancholy and sweet, right? Because at least my read on it, right, is you get. So your whole quest is to find this eye of the universe, and you ultimately figure out how to get there, traveling through this other ship that is all caught up in dark bramble. And you reach the eye of the universe, and it's, eye of the universe is very quantum entity. I don't really know exactly what it is, but things are very weird. It's not necessarily regular physics, regular space. And you basically just kind of meet up with everyone, like you meet up with all of your other explorers. You meet up with Solanum, if you met Solanum on the Quantum Moon, and you kind of all just, you've kind of been like doing all this to figure out what's causing the sun to go supernova, what's causing the universe to end. And you kind of just come to the not that dramatic realization, like, yeah, you can't. This is the end of the universe, man. At the end of the universe is the start of a new one, but there's no stopping it. So you just kind of have this somber moment of playing music with your friends and let it happen.
Yeah, so I think this game is pretty much all about connections and forming bonds, and then learning where the past connects with the present, and then how like things reflect upon each other. So, of course, like you said, we get that final moment. And it's the thing, I think the way that it's crafted to get to that final moment where you get the warp core, and then you have to go through the area where you cannot go fast. You go through the dark bramble, you cannot speed through that thing because you'll get eaten. And dude, I had that moment in dark bramble, like I was like completely stood still. I had the warp core, and I knew that the next area was the vessel. And I was just like stood still, and I knew that there was an anglerfish right behind me. So I was like, all right, I got to just gun it. So I gunned it through the hole, through the seed, got to the vessel, barely missing an anglerfish. So this was like when I finally pieced everything together and then doing all that. And then I get to the moment where it kind of like teleports you to like the stars. And then you like go down into the stars, and then you go into this forest where you're just seeing basically quote unquote fireflies, but they're basically mini universes exploding. It's just kind of a powerful image, because it's thinking about it, it's like you're watching in this. I don't know if this is real. Like, I don't know if this is real. Like the situation they put you in. Like, am I in my own head? Is the universe speaking to me as I'm dying and I'm seeing all these things? I don't even know. But all these universes in this forest that I'm seeing from probably a Hearthian, forest from my home planet. I'm seeing all these universes explode in on each other, and then you get the moment where you have to go through and solve these little weird puzzles to bring all your friends together for the final moment. And then you hear the song you've been hearing the entire game, this theme, and then all your friends start playing this theme. You go to each of them and you talk to them. It's like, I'm ready to talk, right? You're like, yes. And then you go to each of them and say, yes, 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 yes. And then you have that moment where you see that orb forming. So basically you're sitting on the edge of the universe as it collapses with your buddies, all these connections you made throughout your exploration and discovering all these secrets and uncovering this, past that you've never experienced. Of course, you have a connection to that with what's the alien's name?
Solanum?
Solanum. I can never remember the name. I'm very bad at names. But
it's the only one I remember because I love that character.
Dude, that moment's incredible too. When you do the quantum moon and you finally figure out the puzzle for that.
Like, oh my god! And you walk down and you see that there's someone from this race that's still alive that you can talk to. Oh my god! It blew my mind.
But yeah, so you have all your characters there, and you have like a moment with each of them. You can sit there, talk to them, have that final moment, and they tell you a little bit. And each of them have their own personality and stuff. And then you have this orb that's sitting there, and you dive through it, and then you have the final like explosion. And so, there's nothing you could do. So this entire game, you think, it kind of plays with your general feeling for video games, because usually you're like the ultimate savior. You're going to save everybody.
Yep.
But in this game, you have to sit there and accept that there's nothing that you can do, that the universe is inevitably going to be gone and you can't do anything about it. But the journey, discovering all these people and all these things, it's very impactful and meaningful to you. You had this moment with, with all these people and stuff. It's super beautiful and very poignant too.
Yeah, you're just richer for it at the end. It is. I honestly don't know that they could have done it any better. I think there are a couple of Easter egg endings. Like, actually, did you, after grabbing the warp core, did you ever die? Did you ever fail that final run?
Yes, and so I kind of there's a moment where you find out where they talk about the falling sand meeting the pad or something. There's like something you figure out to actually get to the center of Ash Twin.
Yeah.
There's like a little thing they talk about. I'm not exactly sure where I found it, but it was in my head like, okay, so there's going to be a moment where, the sand goes over a pad and I need to be there. So I was like just kind of exploring, like waiting it out. Like, okay, maybe it's this one. And then I got teleported to the center of Ash Twin. And, you figure all that out. And I grabbed the warp core. I'm like, what is this thing? I figured out I grabbed the warp core. Warp tour, really? Am I in 2006? The warp core. And I just start flying off with it. I'm like, I'm not even sure what to do with it. And of course, the music's playing for the last 2 minutes, and then I die, and then supernovas, and then it just says, "You are dead" on the screen.
Oh, it was.
And
scary.
I'm just like, no. Do I have to redo all of this? Do I have to start the game over? Like, what is it going to do?
I had the same thought. I legitimately thought, like, are they going to go like the distance and actually make me, like, completely do this over again? I hope not, but maybe.
Yeah, and that was a moment.
Yeah.
And of course they just, do the last loop you did, and they'll just reload you there, but you don't know that at the time. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah, oh my gosh. It's so, I don't know. I just think it was basically like the perfect way to end that game, and impressive because I would not have ever like thought of that. I don't think like it's like an impossible problem to solve that they managed to solve.
Yeah, it's just like I said, like usually you play a Final Fantasy game, you're like the god that's going to kill the gods, and you're going to just make everybody amazing, and you're going to win at the end. In this game, you lose. The entire world loses, but the thing is in the process of losing, you win at the same time because you are a part. You guys sitting around this campfire create a new universe, basically. You create this new life. And then, of course, they have so the moment where you do get to the heart of the universe and you do this weird thing where you have to, like, basically the heart of the universe is above you that you have to jump into. So you have to climb around. The thing I did is I shot my probe in there, right?
Yeah.
To see if I could take a picture or whatever. And then I jumped in. And then apparently at the very end, you see that probe go by when it says like 1.5 billion years or whatever
that's
later.
Wild.
I didn't realize. I was listening to some podcasts and somebody said that happened, and I was like, oh shit, that happened to me. And then two other people there were like, no, that didn't happen to me. So it's something that only happens if you shoot that probe into the heart of the universe. So that's kind of cool.
That's wild. The game has so many little touches like that. I really like. So when you first wake up, like the first thing you see in the game is what looks to you like a shooting star. And you later learn that it's a probe being launched out of this gravity cannon that they had set up as an experiment to find the eye of the universe.
Yeah,
and
the eye.
And through like the calculations of how like the rotation of that cannon, it always just fires in a different direction every loop. And every time you wake up, that probe does launch in a completely random direction. It's not on like a cycle or anything. It's completely arbitrary the way that it shoots off.
Yeah, I think that is one of the random things. And I did say the heart of the universe earlier. I meant the eye. I guess I just
same difference. People know what
same
you mean.
difference. But I think that's one of the only random things in the world besides the interloper. The interloper does take a slightly random course, I feel like, each time, but it does end up going into the sun. And the thing that was super like pivotal to me is finding the center of getting into that comet.
Yeah.
You got into the comet? Good, you got in the comet. And then reading the story that basically they actually figured out the loop, but the ghost matter. Yes, ghost matter is the thing that ended up killing the alien species.
Yeah, basically, they figured it out, but they couldn't contain this, and that ghost matter expanded all throughout the universe and wiped out that race. And then I think it contracts back, and that's why like pieces of it still exist in certain parts of the world where like it kind of clung on, but largely it's returned back to the interloper, and why the interloper obviously is so full of ghost matter.
Yeah, it's a wild thing, because you think that, okay, you're reading all these stories about this race trying to like figure out about supernovas. You think, oh, they just got wiped out by a supernova. Duh. Right? You think that maybe something that they did and this time loop killed the entire race. But no, they got killed by this dark matter. And if you listen and you read that board inside the vessel, you do realize that there are some still alive in a very specific quadrant of space. Of course, you can't explore it, but they're waiting for the end of the universe in a specific area. So there are people of that race still alive, technically, during this loop, but just in a different place that you can't reach.
Yeah, it's not necessarily just like an ancient civilization that died from, war or whatever stereotype would be in another game. It was this catastrophic event. And it gives new context to ghost matter, which, up to that point just kind of served as like a gameplay function. It's like, oh yeah, that's the colorful stuff that they put in some areas to make traveling around a little bit harder, or to make you use your probe or whatever it might be.
And there are a lot of really like awesome moments of discovery in this game. So that forge on what's the name of that planet with the underground civilization or underneath civilization with the two sections?
Brittle Hollow.
Yes. So there's that forge you can bring up to the top.
Yep. And
that thing gave me a lot of issues. I'm like, how do I get up there? So then eventually I figured out that you had to go to the Ash Twin, right? To get there? Pretty sure.
Yeah, you have to like teleport in
Twin.
From another planet.
Yeah, you have to teleport in from the Ember Twin. And then the thing is the gravity, it only sticks you to the roof. If you jump, you just fall into the black hole and die. Or get shot off into space. And the thing about the black hole on Brittle Hollow, which is super wild, and I accidentally stumbled upon this, so there's that tower you can't get to the top of.
Yeah.
Inside of Brittle Hollow.
Yes,
and
dude.
It sucks you through the black hole in the tower. And then when you're in space, you can just zoom up there and do the challenges up there. Dude.
I remember when I figured that out, I was like, wait, hold up. This whole planet goes down into this black hole. If I can't get to something, I can just follow it in there. It was wild. That was one of my like biggest aha moments. I would say finally like figuring out that you need to take a picture with your probe to lock the quantum moon in place.
Yes.
Like I figured that out relatively late in my playthrough. And so I had, I'd flown through the quantum moon many times trying to figure it out, and I was just kind of like poofed through it like smoke. And so then to do that, and that first time when you go through this like smoke atmosphere and then you like suddenly hit that like open moon crater area, it was like, oh snap.
Exactly. Yeah. And then just trying to figure out that puzzle there, which is like a weird, like, you have to turn the light on and off to like teleport yourself, and then to, like, make sure the pole is clear on the specific planet to teleport yourself forward to get to the top. Dude, that whole entire puzzle was so good. I love this game.
Dude, I do too. There's so much. Even like I don't know, even just like figuring out that one tornado is spinning.
Exactly. And then you shoot your probe in there and it goes down. And then of course you remember the one traveler was saying that the jellyfish will insulate you. So I'm like, okay, so he said the jellyfish will insulate you. So I'm going to go under the jellyfish, and then my heart is racing. And I'm just sitting there like so tense. My whole body is like tight. Like, do not die from this electrical current. Do not die. As this jellyfish is pushing you to the core. And then you go in the core, and it's unlike anything you've seen before, unless you've explored. This is the first time I've seen anything that looked like this in the game. And it had the two different gravity sections. You go from top to bottom, just discovering more and more. And that's where you learn about the warp core, I think. Or you
learn one of the like main pieces of the ending. I forget which one.
Yeah, one of the puzzle pieces. And the music actually kicks in right there. It's just like this really subtle, like ambient music, and it's just so good. And I'm just sitting there like I was so tense. I'm like, oh no, don't screw this up. And then you get into the core, and then it's just like that feeling of relief as you discover everything and you explore and you learn more. And it's just that's what this game's all about. That's that moment of that game is like that 50 times.
Yes.
Throughout the entire thing.
Did you look at the achievement list or do any of the achievements?
Not really, honestly, no.
Okay. So are you aware that there's a second way to get into the core of Giant's Deep?
No.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
It's so cool because like their physics just works. You can fly way the hell out into the universe for like several minutes and then turn around and point your ship at Giant's Deep and like just gun it. And since you continually build speed, you'll gain like so much, like tens of thousands of units of speed, and your ship will hit Giant's Deep so fast that you'll be able to push through that first current to get beyond it. And then you just do it like you did regularly. But just the fact that you can brute force it because of how their engine works, and that they knew about that and like encouraged it, is like, oh my god, I love that they're also willing to give you alternative solutions if you can figure them out. It's so cool.
And just little things like flying around Giant's Deep is a good example. That giant tornado, I'm like, why is there a huge one here? I'm just gonna fly at it and see what happens. And then I end up at this tower with this like that shows you about the picture taking mechanic basically. And that's where I learned about the moon. I'm like, oh, okay, so I guess if you take a picture of something, it stays there. So I can use that knowledge to go to the moon. So, yeah.
It's just so cool, man. It's just such a cool game. I don't know. What order did you do the planets in? Do you remember? Like, what were the first ones you did and the last ones you did?
The first one I did for sure was the Ember Twin and the Sunless City, which I explored first.
Cool.
This is the first one I did. Because I found that vessel that was sitting there with the light beacon sitting out, and as I landed, I saw it. So I went in there, I read all the stuff, and I figured out how to get into the Sunless City, and then I just explored that entire planet like as much as I could. There's some stuff you have to go to a different planet to learn a little more to go back to there, but yeah, that's the first one I did, and then the last one was finding out it was the moon. That was the last one I actually did the whole thing. Like, I've been to the moon before, the quantum moon, but I hadn't actually met the character and all that stuff. that was the last thing I did before I did my final run, as I met the character and I did all the stuff on the moon. So, what about you? What's the first and last thing you did?
The first planet I ever went to was Brittle Hollow, and explored around in that city a little bit. Which, side note, by the way, I really like that they do this in Brittle Hollow, and they do it for the Sunless City, like you mentioned. That they'll have like shortcuts to get back into these areas once you've discovered them. And again, because the game is smart, the shortcuts have always been there the whole time. It's not like you opened up a one-way path. It's just they're just hidden pretty well, and you would never know about them unless you happen to find them yourself. But I did Brittle Hollow, which like immediately blew my mind because that means that the black hole was like one of the first things I experienced, which it was like, it made me be like, oh man, the possibility space in this game is just wild. There's so much potential here. And then I
would say it's outer wild, right?
Oh my God. Yes, I would say that. And then I did a little bit of Ash and Ember Twin, but I actually on Ash Twin, or Ember Twin? Which one's the rocky one? Ember Twin?
Ember, yeah.
Yeah. There's like all those caves you have to explore where the sand is rising slowly.
Yeah. That's the Sunless City, and then like the stuff around it.
Yeah. There's I didn't realize that, I forget the specifics of it, but you can like jump and you can use like your thrusters, but there's a button to like do like a stronger thruster, basically. Like it's like the equivalent of like sprint hovering, and I didn't realize that, so I was like really trying to brute force not using that for a while, and I was like, why is this jump so hard in this cave? I'm good at games, I should be able to get this. So I left that for a while, and went to Giant's Deep and did a lot on Giant's Deep, and then I then I did some Dark Bramble, then I came back and finished then I did the Interloper. I think I then figured it out. And then I finished up with most of Ember and Ash Twin, and the Quantum Moon was one of my later ones too.
Yeah, and the thing about the Interloper, that took me forever to figure out, because I know they said the Sunless side. So I went there a few times, and I was like, okay, so maybe I need to recall the ship, because you can recall the ship to the twins, that's on there. So I tried that, I recalled the ship and went back, nothing really changed, and I was like, okay, well, they said the Sunless side, so I'm just going to sit here and just wait. So I'm sitting on this comet, going through space, just looking around, just waiting, and then I hear that, and then you look down and you see you can get inside there. That's such a good moment.
So sick.
So good. But dude, the anglerfish, there's a moment with the anglerfish, so of course you have to like go through this area and they're blind, and there's 3 of them in that one seed where if you follow the red seed over and over again, or the orange, whatever. And I got in there and I'm going, and there's a moment where I'm at a standstill because I'm just still exploring, trying to find the original thing with the distress beacon, and I'm just flying. I'm like, all right, I can boost a little bit. I think I'm far enough away from him. I hear a sound. I hear him coming towards me. I'm like, I think I'm good, right? And then I hear a crash, and I'm like, what's going on? And literally the front half of my ship goes away, and I turn around, and the fish is right there.
Oh my God.
And it eats me.
Oh my God, that's so
giant
good.
teeth. So there's so many moments like that. Just like, I didn't know the ship can break in half like that. That was so insane.
That's so cool. That's so awesome. Just the first moment of getting eaten by those, I was like, oh my God, there's going to be like threats like that in this game. But I was like more blown away by just the structure of Dark Bramble, because you fly up to it, and comparatively to the other planets, it's so small. And then you get in there, and it's just like this weird nebulous space that you're kind of like guiding yourself just through like the light of what you can find. It was, I don't know, I thought that was a really cool area.
Yeah, if you go the wrong way in that one, you will end up in an infinite loop too. So like, I figured, I'm just going to go and just try to figure this out. And then I realized I kept going through the same areas over and over again. And then I put my probe, and then the probe is like in the other area, but it's also right next to me. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I had to end up just like, well, I guess I didn't get anywhere this time. I'm just going to jump out of the ship and kill myself and try again type of thing.
Isn't that where you would find that old explorer guy too? Like the former explorers team guy?
Yeah, that's one of those like aha moments for me too, because I was using the scope. What is it called? I have it written
The
down.
sound scope or whatever.
Signal scope,
Mm.
signal scope. So I was doing the Outer Wilds Adventures,
Yep.
theme, and I was just literally because I was kind of at a standstill. I'm like, where do I need to do next? And I just like going to each of the guys, with that. So I went to him, and I was like, well, it's in Dark Bramble, and I just kept following it, and then there's just this dude sitting there, on the side, just chilling in a hammock, and it's this is the only guy that knows about the loop and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I did find out later that if you talk to him multiple times, you get the ability to meditate.
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't actually do that. So
I didn't get that until
something.
so late. But honestly, I didn't mind. To me, it was kind of funny when you would be like, "Oh, all right. Well, I need to reset this loop," and you either like run yourself out of oxygen or like just hop in your ship and drive it into the sun, or however you want to reset it. I thought that was
Yeah,
pretty fun.
that's a very Groundhog Day thing too. It's
Yep.
like, oh, let's just die. But yeah, besides that, there's one I was not wanted to mention real quick. Oh yeah, and then there was also another thing I discovered is you can meet yourself. Did you ever read about that?
Um. No, I don't think so. How do you do that?
I'm not even 100% sure how to do it, but apparently there's a way that you can literally go and have a conversation with a past loop version of yourself.
Oh my god. I want to know how to do that. Is it something with the quantum moon, I'm guessing?
I think so, yeah. I was just listening to like of course you play this game and then you want to hear people talk
Yes.
about it,
Yep.
spoilery. So I was listening to as many shows as I can the other day, just diving deep into it. But yeah, apparently there is something that didn't get discovered till later on because this game has so many layers,
Yeah.
and different things you can do. But yeah, you can literally just talk to yourself.
That's so
It's
cool.
wild.
Oh my god, I want to do that so bad. I don't think I did that.
Yeah, I didn't. I definitely didn't do that. So I want to. I haven't watched the video on it yet because I was literally listening to this like yesterday and I just haven't had time. But yeah, I definitely want to at least watch a video of somebody doing that and just imagine you're playing and then you discover that yourself.
Oh my
God.
gosh. That'd be so cool. Yeah, man. Amazing game. So good.
Must play. Obviously, you guys played it if you're listening to the spoiler part. But if there's anything you guys want to talk about spoilery, our DMs are open.
Yes.
Our emails are open. Whatever, we'll talk to you about it because this game is one of those ones you definitely want to talk to people about.
Yeah, and it's just like there's just no end to the amount of cool things you can say.
Well, this is the first time we've done a spoiler cast and we've gone a long time now, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. What do you think? Any last parting words about Outer Wilds before we cut off this last segment?
No, that works for me. Thanks everybody for listening to the main episode and to the spoiler section. I hope that if you're this far, you're part of the elite played Outer Wilds club, or
Yes.
you ignored all of our warnings and there's nothing I can do for you. But yeah, just appreciate everyone listening.
I don't think if you listen to this without context that some of this stuff you'd be like, oh, that sounds cool. I don't really think you would get the full breadth of what we're talking about unless you played the game.
True.
Still,
yeah.
even if you listen to the spoilers. But yeah, this is going to be up there in at least my favorite game in the last 10 years or so. I don't know if it's my favorite game of all time. I want to sit with it some more or like in that tier, but definitely in the last like 10 years or so. This is up there. Top 5 probably.
Yeah, for me it was definitely way, way up there. I mean, when you start talking last 10 years, you got some big shoes to fill, right? Like some big shoes to fill, but it's just so good. One of my favorites.
This song is new to me, but I'm honored to be a part of it.
Josh abandoned me. It's just my podcast now. I can do whatever I want. I'm going to add a third tier. There's going to be main quest, side quest, and space quest. And all the space themed games go in space quest. And then people are like, hey, have you played FTL? Have you played Faster Than Light? I'm like, yeah. Go look on the space quest. And that's where it is. Anytime he recommends a game that's in space, I'm going to say, sure, we'll put that on the main quest, or yeah, that's a side quest game. Good choice. And then when he's not looking, I move it to the space quest. But don't tell him. It's just between us. It's our secret.